Is it just Reality Bites? Is there a staff?
There's a staff part to it too.
And are you up then?
I am.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Harris, and good evening, Council. As Council is aware or may recall, when we brought Reality Bites on over a year ago, it was for a one-year agreement to provide IT services to the town of Crossfield. For the past year, Reality Bites has identified and addressed ongoing issues and shortcomings with our IT service. Through in-depth discussions and the attention to areas of ongoing concern, the town has made significant steps forward in achieving a more reliable operational system that will meet our needs today and well into the future. Ashley and Oliver are here tonight. You've had a chance to review the contract. The recommendation from administration tonight to council is that council approves a new 3-year contract from April 2023 till April 2026 with Reality Bites as per the attached document number 1 to ensure the continuity and enhanced effectiveness of our service through software and hardware upgrades and moving forward that are fiscally responsible. This contract does align with the council approved operational 2023 budget. And with that being said, Oliver and Ashley are here to answer any questions council may have on the contract that are technical in nature.
Excellent. Thank you. I have a question actually for you, Sue. Have our lawyers looked at the contract?
No, they have not.
Who reviewed the contract?
I did.
Okay. I'm just wondering, there was I can't remember what item it was, but it related to the insurance. And it basically just said you had cover, but you, ample coverage, but it didn't say an amount. Do you guys know what the amount of your liability coverage is?
We carry 3 different kinds of insurance off the top of my head. One, I want to say that our general liability is 5 million. We also have professional liability and cybersecurity insurance as well. I can get you the exact figures within 24 hours. I don't want to give you just numbers off the top of my head.
Yeah,
but
that's great. I'm just kind of curious as to why it's just a general statement within your contract and why we don't have those numbers right in the contract. I would kind of like to see that.
We can definitely update the contract to include those.
Okay, that sounds good. And then as I was looking through it, I didn't see any warranties or guarantees in the terms. Am I missing something?
Do you mean guarantees as to service levels and deliverables? Those are typically within our larger scope of work document, which is a really, really wordy, long piece of technical documentation as to what we do or take care of. We can provide some breakdown of that in the contract, should the town wish it to be there.
Well, I personally would like to see that if that's all right. And now I'll just open it up to other questions. Anyone else?
To the chair.
Go
I got one
ahead.
for Sue actually, because I kind of asked some questions and it says that we're including the service portion of 55,478.
Yeah.
But the answer back from Reality Bites was $42,000 with or 42,264 is the user's rate. And if we take their quarterly hours adding up, I don't get to the 55,478. You know where that number came from?
When we were putting the provisional budget together, we used that 42,000 and whatever the number was as the base. And then we added a certain amount of extra money to make sure we had enough in the budget in case something came up.
Yeah, it wasn't one of them, it was more to use.
Correct.
My confusion. I got one to Reality Bites, guys. I'd like to understand a little bit more about the January 1. You're doing a rate change or a rate adjustment based on the government. And John makes a bit of an explanation to what that rate change is, but it's a little murky. So on January 1, can you explain that process and how that looks like?
Yeah, if I may. We basically look at CPI over the last 12 months and make a rate adjustment on that. That's the only rate adjustment that happens over the period of the 3-year contract. Every year we will look at the cost of business and we adjust our rate to anyone else that's starting a contract at that point. When you lock us in for a 3-year contract, we don't change that rate for you. We just change the rate that we give you as the contract, which is $148 per user, and then change that per CPI at January 1st.
But there's no forecast or there's no understanding what that rate could be.
It's linked directly to CPI.
But from a town point of view, we don't know if that's $5, $10. There's not really anything that let us forecast what that is, right?
We pull the number directly from StatsCan, from their website. So
Yeah.
what we can see is essentially what you guys can see in
In the
terms of,
last 3 or 4 years, do you have a number of what that usually changes by?
no, I don't. I can pull that information for you though.
Figures are going to be skewed over the last 4 years because we've had COVID happen.
Mhm.
Rate of inflation has changed, fluctuated quite a lot. It's gone from, I believe last year was 6%. 2 years before that, it was down as low as 2%. So it does depend on what's going on.
It's hard to put a metric to the benefit of a 3-year contract without having some perpetual actual numbers to say this is what it looks like, including the January, give or take for a forecast, was more where my concern. So
Okay, we'll just take council questions first, Sue, and then we'll get to you. Anybody else have questions for Reality Bites? You're good? Okay, go ahead, Sue.
Just with regard to the insurance on page 7 under point 15, it does talk about insurance.
It does.
It doesn't specify the amounts. What you're asking for is the amounts to be
That's right.
included in there?
Yeah.
Okay, just needed that clarity.
Yeah. Okay, any further questions for Reality Bites? No? Does somebody want to make a motion?
no,
Okay, it doesn't have to be the same one that's in here. You can suggest
Okay.
a different one.
I guess without understanding really what the 3-year numbers are, it's tough for me to make a motion or look towards the motion without understanding the full true benefits. So I'm kind of stuck. So, you know, I would make a motion that would approve a 1-year contract, but for a renegotiation of a 1-year contract, but I don't know if that's what we're looking for also from council.
Well,
Admin.
my question to you would be, like, do you want to make a 1-year contract or a 3-year contract? Based on the information that you have?
Yeah.
Do you want further information to come back? Is that what you're looking for?
I would prefer to have a little more information come back, yeah.
Okay, and then can you make sure that we let them know what that information looks like?
May I add
Sure.
some context? So I'm not sure how many people were here when we were first brought on. I believe all of you were here. We were brought on, initially we had wanted to enter into this on a 3-year, because that's what we standardize on. But given your previous experiences with the last IT provider, you were all very fairly and very naturally very gun shy to enter another long-term commitment. So we met you guys in the middle to arrange a 1-year a deal. And I would like to say that we have proved that we are, we did what we said we would. And that's allayed any further fears that you'd want to enter into a shorter term contract again.
Okay, Sue.
Thank you, Mayor Harris. I get both positions. I'm wondering if council would entertain a tabling motion until such time as Reality Bites can provide those 3 areas that you've asked to be incorporated into an agreement. And then we bring it back still with the recommendation for a 3-year agreement.
Yeah, I mean, the recommendation can be that, but I think that whether it's a 1-year or 3-year, I think that Mike wanted some further information.
I think I'd like to see, just so that we can explain to our residents what a 1-year contract looks like. Here's a 1-year contract, here's a 3-year contract, here's the benefits of said 3-year contract. I think what you guys are doing is fantastic. I really do. I don't have an argument on that or even a question with that. I understand that the quality of what we're getting. I think sometimes when we're signing 3-year contracts, we have been jumping in, and this is before my time on council, into things that have been a little just jumping. So I guess understanding the benefits of the 3-year contract to the town would probably help us push that over the edge of understanding the 3-year.
Okay, so you want to make a comparison between a 1-year contract and 3-year
Yeah.
contract with those changes in the lease. So something like that.
If I may, you would like a side by side what we would look like in 3 years' time, were you to sign 3 1-year contracts versus how we are now projected
I think
finances.
I think we could take on a 1-year, just here's a 1-year contract, here's a 3-year contract. You've given us the benefits of knowing that we understand what we're looking at.
Yeah.
You know, what your rates are looking to forecast at. When we see that, it's,
Is there significant cost savings to be had with the 3-year contract versus a 1-year contract?
We don't up our rates other than our rate going up by CPI is the only thing that we change. When we do our review of how much it costs us to do business in a year, we won't change those rates every year if we're in a 3-year contract with you.
how about I make this for a motion? I'll make this motion that council approve a new I'll ask you guys. Is a 2-year contract something that we could also do similar to this or not? Or are we more focusing on the 3-year contract?
We do 3 years as standard.
Well, that may be standard for you.
Yeah.
But I think that there's always negotiating room with your business partners.
Absolutely.
So I think a 1 or 2 or 3 could happen, but it would just be based on the terms.
We can certainly do side by sides of
Yeah.
all 3 options if that's what you need.
Councillor Gustafson.
Through the chair,
Yeah.
I would highly suggest and not put any pressure on any other council member to make a decision tonight, but
Yeah.
certainly to table this, we are going to make the right decision. And
Mhm.
and I do appreciate your time and effort you guys put into it. And if you could give us the time to table this motion, and we certainly appreciate you guys coming down here at every council meeting that we request and getting us back in order. But I think we owe our residents, us making the right decision, and certainly us being comfortable to make the right decision, because I'm a little bit on the fence as well. Maybe I'm not as tech savvy as Councillor Knight, but certainly each one of us has the right to ask to table this as well. And I think if you could appreciate that on our end as well, we would certainly enjoy that. So I'll let Councillor Knight go from there.
Go ahead, Sue.
I just wanted to add one more comment, and that is that this agreement actually expires on
Mhm.
April 30th. So if you do ask for it to be tabled, I would suggest you bring it back for the May 9th meeting.
Yeah.
And I need to ask you guys if that works for you, because our contract will have been expired by then.
So I will ask that you guys let us clarify this with John, but provisionally, I don't see any issue with us continuing services for that small gap in time until a permanent decision has been made or a final decision has been made. Obviously, John isn't here, so I am provisionally speaking on his behalf. I don't see him having an issue with that small window.
Okay, great. Councillor Gustafson.
Since we do have and have posted a special meeting, could we have that agenda?
No.
We can't.
No, because we've already posted it as an audit meeting
Okay.
and budget. Yeah,
Just a question.
Yeah.
Just to, because it would jump it up.
yeah, unfortunately not.
Okay, fair enough.
How you doing, Mike?
Great.
Do you want help with motion? I think it's simply that we table it
Yeah.
for May 9th. And they just bring back those comparisons and make those slight changes on the agreement.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to table the 3-year
Hang on 1 second, Mike.
I'm sorry.
Sure.
The next meeting is May 2nd. There's so many meetings coming up.
Okay,
It's
so
not
May
May 9th, it's
2nd.
May 2nd.
See, and that's sooner. That's
I
good.
should call
Yeah.
it.
Sorry.
Yeah, so May 2nd. Yeah.
I'll make a motion to table contract offer till May the 2nd's meeting with Reality Bites bringing back information as requested.
Okay, all in favor?
All right.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you for your patience.
Good.
Okay.
Okay, United Church lease.
That would be me. Is this the one where I'm gonna get all the questions?
No,
Wait for it.
Okay, in terms of background rationale, this is the United Church lease agreement where the town is currently housed, the town offices. At the May 18th, 2021 council meeting, council made a motion to renew the existing agreement with the United Church for a further 2-year period. The motion's there. Exploring a new administrative building was identified within the strategic plan 2.1.1. However, this remains on hold indefinitely and until such time the town is in a better financial position to pursue this option. In March, staff reviewed the current agreement while considering past and recent events where electrical problems were discovered and plumbing facilities were not available to the staff. The following amendments were made to the agreement under repairs for the United Church Board to consider. 8.2, the landlord will ensure that all plumbing fixtures, including washroom facilities, are in good working order prior to and during the town's regular operating hours, Monday to Friday. I will let council now know that we currently have a porta potty outside our office.
Yeah, I heard.
They are in there doing the work to correct the plumbing. It would have been nice if they had done it over a weekend, so it wouldn't have interfered with our staff and operations, but it is what it is. 8.3, the landlord will ensure that all electrical components of the building remain in good and safe working order and that regular inspections of electrical outlets take place as a fire preventative measure. That's been completed. A meeting with church representatives was held on March 29th to discuss the terms of the agreement. The church has acknowledged the additions and will be working on ensuring that the building remains safe and operational at all times. Within the meeting, it was disclosed that the church board is in discussions on how best to proceed, and they already are proceeding. Any work needed will require the office to be closed due to the plumbing. We know that. Ample notice will be provided should this need to occur on a weekday. Weekend work is being explored as well, which was cost prohibitive for the church. The church is not looking to make any other amendments to the agreement, including the amount for rent. The current rent is $45,600 payable in the amount of $3,800 on the first day of each and every month commencing at the commencement of the term. The recommendation, administration recommends that a further 3-year term be entered into at the rate of $3,800 per month with an expiry date of May 16th, 2026. This then would allow for the newly appointed council in 2025 to provide direction on exploring a new administration building. Proposed motion, administration recommends that a further 3-year term be entered into for the United Church lease agreement at the rate of $3,800 per month with an expiry date of May 16th, 2026. And the draft of the lease is attached.
Excellent. Thanks, Sue. Questions for Sue?
Through the chair, Sue. So under 1.0 and J for work hours,
Yeah,
so would it make more sense not to have specific hours in there? So if they were to change within the term, you wouldn't have to go back and rewrite the contract to make the change?
yeah, there's some merit in that, but it has not been a problem since we've had the lease agreement.
Okay.
I mean, when it's minor amendments, typically administration can just go forward and change the agreement without having it bring it back to council.
Okay. Okay, any other questions? Okay, if there's no other questions, can I get a motion?
Okay, through the chair, I'll make the motion that the town of Crossville gets a further 3-year lease term be entered into for the United Church lease agreement at the rate of $3,800 with an expiry date of May 16th, 2026.
All in favor?
aye.
Motion carried. Okay, item 6.1, fire department level of service policy.
First off, I'd like to introduce Mandy from the lodge who's here tonight.
Hey, Mandy.
Before we start the presentation. Background rationale on levels of service for the fire department. As council's aware, levels of service was identified as a major concern within the recently completed fire services review. Council tabled that particular part of the report until such time as administration had a chance to meet with both of the managers for the lodge and for the manor, which we have done. On Tuesday, February 7th, 2023, God, it seems like a lifetime ago, at the regular council meeting, council tabled any decision with respect to levels of service, medical calls specifically, for the fire services department until such time as additional discussions with the lodge and manor could be had. And once administration had received call summary data from our fire department, which we now have, attachment 1. On March 9th, 2023, myself and Russ Nash, the Director of Community and Protective Services, met with Mandy, and I'm sorry if I say this wrong, Mandy Drakenberg. Oh, great. Mandy Drakenberg and Trevor Young from the Lodge and Manor respectively to discuss the current situation and to address the levels of service, specifically Alpha and Bravo calls on the Crossfield Fire Department. Some excellent discussions took place as we reviewed some data provided by the Lodge, which is attached as attachment 2. At that same meeting, we also discussed the need for further meetings, which we agreed to do every 3 months to address some things that I'm going to get to in the report. Trevor also advised that in 2022, the manor had approximately 12 medical calls, of which fire services were the first on scene. Other items discussed included the response times from EMS being still an issue. Fire is typically on scene first based on information received by dispatch and then relayed to ambulance and fire. It is our collective belief that dispatch needs to be much more diligent in the information received and relayed to ensure the proper resources are being dispatched. In addition, there appears to be a much greater need because of the aging residents who are staying in place with no other options available to them. The province needs to recognize that Crossfield has a lodge and manor in town and that transportation continues to be a problem with respect to a variety of medical calls attended to by fire services. It was also suggested that perhaps more discussion needs to take place with the handy bus service to alleviate the strain on first responders by transporting seniors from the lodge and manor to access medical attention that is not truly emergent in nature. And those are the discussions we've agreed to follow up with the manor and the lodge on for the rest of this year, to come up with more of a specific plan of action. And so you've got the 2 enclosures there. Recommendation that council approves the recommendation to keep Alpha and Bravo calls in place until the conclusion of 2023 for callouts by the Crossfield Fire Department. And if you review the data, you'll see that the calls have started to drop a little bit. I can't tell you why that is, but the numbers are down. And that a subsequent review takes place in early 2024 of the 2023 statistical data, as well as to review the effectiveness of the newly adopted 811 calls and the effectiveness and continuing impacts on the Crossfield Fire Department, and that the revised level of service policy be approved as presented and reviewed every year for the next 2 years during the annual budgeting process.
Questions for Sue?
This is my turn through the chair.
Yeah.
Like me.
Go ahead.
Because I started this whole mess, so not a whole mess, but I think it was great that we got an opportunity to dive a little bit deeper into what you and getting the numbers, which was great, Sue. This is for you, Sue. The reason I guess we were thinking about changing the level of service was because of the concern of budget, coverage, kind of all of those things combined. Is that or
Staff burnout.
Well, that was the bigger issue, was the number of calls, the call volume, which was at over 600.
Yep.
And the burnout and impacts on our current volunteer service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the primary.
So
The other 2 are definitely consideration.
okay. So basically the amount of calls and I look at the numbers and the numbers don't lie. You know, we have 40%, 47% in 2021, down a little bit, 43% in 2022. These are just medical calls.
Correct.
And the numbers in February 2023, 68% of the calls are medical right now. So not to say that, you know, they're trending up again, but like you said, the amount of calls have come down. and you hate to use this, but do we have kind of a cost per call out? Do we do any metrics on that? You know, what does it cost the fire department, or what does it cost the town to send out for a medical call or for a fire call or whatever like that? Do we do anything? And I'm just trying to ask for budgetary reasons, because we look at, 547 in 21, 400, almost 600 in 2022. Can we break that down into a number and know that we're going to be okay when we pass that budget, that we're going to be okay again this year with the fire department budget? So
I don't have them with me.
Yeah.
But absolutely, I mean, we can definitely, we know that anytime there's a call, it doesn't matter what the call's for. Typically, it's a crew of 4 that goes.
Mhm.
And it can be, members can be called back depending on the severity. So say, for example, fire services goes to the lodge and they dispatches it correctly, we could send 2, right? But typically you always have 4 available to go.
4 available.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess my question is to Mandy.
Is,
Sorry, anything?
sorry, is
Because
she part of the presentation?
She is, yes.
Okay, maybe Mandy, if you can move up to the table. Surprise.
And just so council's aware, both Mandy and Trevor got a draft of the submission to council a couple of weeks ago, so they'd have an opportunity to review it and provide any additional
Before
information.
us, what?
A draft.
I guess it's really a comment maybe from yourself, but also a question to you is, how does this align and how are you able to make it align with, our wishes as council? But we really aren't changing anything, but how are you going to, I guess, manage the calls coming in so it, I guess, lessens the burnout, the burden on the fire department on your end, I guess?
That's a loaded question.
And I hate to ask it,
No,
but how can you help
absolutely,
our town?
absolutely. And Mayor Harris, thank you for having me, Sue Council. It's good that we are having conversations and that we're having regular meetings and that we're committed to really working together to see what we can do. We don't want to be the reason for the fire department to burn out and all the rest of it, obviously. It is a fact that our seniors are, at the lodge are getting older and older. Like, I would like to have the 65-year-olds that are fit and able-bodied and drive themselves, but average age is 85 plus that are moving into the lodge, right? Like, people staying in place as long as possible. They're, at a certain age when they come to us, and with that, obviously the risk are increasing as well. We really are trying to be very diligent when we make the call, right? Like, I'm talking to the team. If I'm on site, obviously, I'll be present, making sure that we're making the best decision possible. We've made the decision to get an AED into the lodge. You may have heard through the grapevine in town that we're working on getting this. We try and do what we can to be as proactive, to have all the resources in place as well that can help with any emergencies. Given that, the EMS response time can take, it can be delayed and whatnot. So we do what we can to keep our people safe, our staff, our residents. And we really try and determine, like, is this a 911 call or do we call 811? So we really get into the habit more so to really think about, okay, who do we call first? Who is the best one to call, right? And we're in close contact with the family members, especially for the residents that we know are higher, level of care needy. We're working close with AHS and the nurses that come to really see who should be perhaps be on the list to move on to higher level of care. It all takes time.
Mhm.
The level 3 and 4 facilities are all full. Like, nothing happens overnight. So we really do what we can to make sure that we have the most appropriate residents at the lodge. You know, but it's obviously not always perfect. The handy bus, as you know, Sue had mentioned, is a good resource for the residents really to be flexible and get to appointments themselves. And if they know that they should be seeing, you know, perhaps Didsbury, the hospital sooner than later, they can call and oftentimes, you know, they can go into Airdrie and Calgary, but they couldn't go to Didsbury. So that's something that we're looking at, you know, what is the parameters for the handy bus? Like, can, you know, why are they not going elsewhere? Why are we only going to Airdrie or Calgary? So we try and do and have all the information. So I don't know. We're happy for any more feedback. We're happy for ongoing conversations and whatnot.
Awesome. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. I just have one last comment. I am so glad that we went through this because it's given us an opportunity to go through the exercise of being able to manage our limited resources and, you know, thinking outside the box and, you know, making sure that our seniors are well taken care of.
Absolutely.
I think it's
it's,
really
and
important.
it's good. I mean, it's never that anyone was abusing the system and calling 911 nilly-willy, right? Like when we call, like we know there's
Yeah.
a reason and we need to support and fire continues to come and they're there within minutes, right? And we're grateful and
Yep.
there's never seems to be a complaint, at least when they walk through the door, right? So it's, but we really try and be very cautious of when we make the call. And when we do make the call, then
Yep.
we really hope for help as soon as possible because, right.
Thanks.
I think too, the other thing that,
Hang on.
oh, sorry.
Any other questions?
Yes, through the chair. Mandy, I do actually have a question for
Mhm.
you. So I was reading the letter that came in from Trevor.
Mhm.
And I was just kind of curious as to, I don't know, sorry, I'm trying to figure a way to word
Mhm.
this. Was you had stated that you like to have the fire department to come out because they have a key to the building.
For the manor, yeah.
In my thought, when I was reading this, it shouldn't matter in that aspect because if you've got an ambulance coming, fire department, RCMP, there should be a staff member meeting them at the door.
That's for the
So-
lodge. So that is
Yeah.
for the manor. So Trevor speaks
Okay.
for the manor, right? And so that lockbox that's there with the key and the fire department has the code to get in.
Hmm.
EMS wouldn't have that. So the staff is not over at the manor. Though we are in
Oh,
close
okay.
proximity, the manor is not staffed. It's independent living. The residents have not residents, the
Okay,
tenants
that's
have their
why.
own suites.
Because I'm
right?
like,
Yeah.
it just
Oh, there's
makes
always
sense.
somebody at the lodge. So
That
when we
makes
call,
sense.
the
Okay,
doors
thank
open
you.
and we
Right,
wave them
'cause
down.
staff
No.
weren't meeting him at the door when a
Absolutely.
call had been made. That
It's
was
be-
my
yeah, it's
question.
because the manor is
Okay,
not
thank
staffed.
you.
That's right.
So say on that note, is it in a lockbox? There's a code for the lockbox for the key?
That I believe that's what it is.
So then that code,
Is that a,
I think so. That's what I understood.
that's what.
so
it
then
is.
that code could be provided to AHS as well?
I guess, so if they have a
Maybe.
general
Yeah.
information on their side. Well,
And they might, I
well,
don't know, but
yeah.
it may be something worth looking into.
Yeah.
So that we have
I mean,
better
worst case
coverage.
scenario, if there is like, you know, if EMS and whatnot shows up, chances are the lodge would kind of like see that there's a commotion and
Hmm.
we may be able to assist as well. But again, this is, you know, it may delay their service, but we can probably figure out, you know,
Yeah.
if on AHS side, if they can make a note on file.
I thought there was instructions on the lockbox or by the lock. I think there
Probably,
is.
yeah. And I mean, it was a valid point for Trevor to raise. I don't really think we've run into any of these issues because fire is usually
Yeah,
there.
although
I think it's more so the
I
down
think
the
it's
line.
more the manner of the lodge communicating that with the
Yeah.
services that they need. Not necessarily the burden on our fire department because they're the only ones that have it. I think that
Mhm.
you need to share that information and see or have those conversations with the other services to see where that leads.
We can definitely have that follow-up conversation with Trevor
Yeah.
because it's specific to the manor.
Yeah, I
For
think
sure.
so. I think would be
Yeah.
good. I do have a couple questions and Mandy, maybe these are for you, but are the lodge of the manor, are you guys for profit?
No.
You're not for profit. Okay, that's good to know.
Mm.
And then maybe Sue, back to, I think what Counselor Gustafson was alluding to, do we charge back for these calls to the manor? And if we do, who would we charge it to?
As far as I know, we don't charge it back.
We might need to look into that. And I don't know who the charge goes to, the individual or the lodge or the manor. But it should be billed back just like any other billing for that service.
Yep.
Just curious, Mandy, what steps has the lodge and the manor taken since our last conversation in regards to getting, I know you're talking about an AED, but a lot of our calls are lifting somebody up and putting them back into their bed or that type of thing. What steps has the manor and lodge taken to hire the people with the right skill set?
There is no such answer for me to say we just hire people because we don't have the funding. We're a non-for-profit, where the manor is purely funded through the government, but Trevor could speak more to it because that's his department. We can pay people out of a budget that we don't have, right? Like we have policies in place at the lodge.
That.
Yeah, the foundation has policies in place that we don't lift, right? And there's reasons for that policy to be in place. And in order for that to change, as you say, then we would have to hire. It would take a level 2 lodge to a level 3-4, right? Where there's medical stuff inside. That's not what we are. That's not what we provide. So we cannot just go ahead. Again, this may be a question that's above my pay grade.
Yeah.
But it's just as far as I know, that is not a policy that we can change. And that's not just something that we can change and just hire more equipped people. Like keep in mind, we're open 24/7. A fall can happen at any time.
Yeah.
We couldn't just happen to have, 2 to 3 people on site 24/7 in the event of but again, this perhaps is a question above my pay grade. I can take it up to my superiors and we'll see.
I'm just
Absolutely.
thinking, like when you guys hire staff, like what skills and stuff do they need to be there, and could you not match that skill set with
Our
what
staff,
your needs are?
our staff are housekeepers, cooks, activity, coordinators. Everybody is trained in first aid.
And then
But it's separate.
with the lift, I mean, they have some, I don't know if you guys have ever looked into it, but for some grants and other things to buy a lift to help out.
Again, we're not a medical facility, so that again takes us to a different level of
Okay.
service.
Yeah, I did.
That is
I
not the
didn't know
service that we
so,
provide.
Yeah,
That
Yeah.
answered my question.
yeah. Okay, thanks,
Okay.
Mandy. Further questions?
Can you just clarify if I have a question, if I
Yes.
may, Mayor?
Yeah.
So when you say to bill people back at the manor when they're making a phone call, can you elaborate on what you mean by that?
Well, I think that if our fire department responds to an emergency or something, typically what we do is we would bill somebody for that call.
Mhm.
And so that is a paid for service that the town provides. Right now, the lodge and the manor are getting a free service.
I would have to clarify how much of it's free and how much of it we do charge for.
Yeah, and
Okay.
that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
To the chair.
Go ahead.
So I guess maybe we should elaborate on this, like, whether it's a medical service or a fire service or anything, like any service that they provide. If they come to my house, your house,
Mhm.
like anybody's house, do I get a bill?
Not typically.
Well, and that depends.
It depends on the nature of the call.
And
Well,
it depends.
If-
Yeah,
if-
Emily
if-
can
if-
see us
If
fire
if I have a medical emergency or if I have a fire, if somebody. I don't know, like.
We
if-
build back for fires and we build
Mhm.
back for floods. But I don't know about the medical.
And that's
Side.
because we're rolling all our equipment, like our pumpers, our aerials, depending on what has to roll. A fire, you're getting billed back for. That's just the nature of the way it's set up.
And that usually gets covered by insurance, but.
Yeah,
But.
but with medical, it's all over the map right now, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we're billing back 100% for medical calls or what percentage we are billing back for. I
Yeah.
don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I think we need to get some clarification on that
Mhm.
before, I think anything is said.
That could certainly create a panic if something like this was to all of a sudden circulate in town. It's like, now people are being pilled because then that needs to be clarified, right? I mean, generally speaking, anyone over 65, like 65 plus that is covered on a Blue Cross and seniors, not benefits, but insurance, the 911 EMS calls and rides into the hospital are covered. Like there may be a bill initially, but it's usually
Their
covered.
insurance, yeah.
So if we make the call to 911 for an emergency, it is not our choice that fire comes. It is not our fault that EMS is not in town and it fires. So it brings it back to,
But-
should we do the alpha or whatever calls? But again, if we're providing the service, it is, again, EMS is not in town, but that is not the lodge's fault. That is not anyone's fault that makes a 911 call.
But here's the thing. Over 12 years ago, the province took medical calls away from fire departments. So they made that call. This fire department and other fire departments, probably out of the goodness of their hearts, have continued to respond, maybe even against the wishes of the province. We know that the province has to figure stuff out and get better at what they do. But it can't be at the cost of burning out our few volunteers that we even have here. Especially the only 8 or less that we have that live in town. And so these are the things that we have to figure out, and we have to ask good questions to get to that final point where, and get the answers to get the final point to make that decision.
Absolutely. And if I may, then perhaps the province need to be built, right? Like if they're the
Yeah.
one who's saying,
and-
and not the residents, because it's not, again, it wasn't the seniors or anyone that has a fall or whatnot that has said like, oh, 12 years
Yeah.
ago, sure, don't send fire anymore, right?
Yeah,
That
That was the
so
province.
service needs to be provided. Ideally, it's EMS if we had it in town or
Yeah.
if, right? And it brings it back to if we have the 90-year-old or the 60-year-old that has a bad fall. Like we've had a fall a few weeks ago that appeared to be a fall.
Mhm.
It turned out to be a stroke.
Yeah.
If we wouldn't have had the first responders on site within minutes, that could have turned from an obvious fall, which we thought initially, and turned very, very ugly quickly, right? So
Yeah.
that brings it back to, that's why we were asking for the Alpha and Bravo calls not to be canceled right away,
Yeah.
because if there isn't a backup plan, we're going to be left with no support.
Through the chair.
Go ahead.
Maybe just one final suggestion, because I know that, our time is valuable for all of us here and I don't want to get off
Well,
of
we'll
this,
see
but I
if
think.
anybody else has any
if-
questions.
No, absolutely,
Okay.
but maybe this brings up a point here on about the, whether the fire department comes or the ambulance come, somebody's needing to get paid.
Mhm.
Now, if the ambulance comes, if our fire department doesn't come, the ambulance is sending a bill to somebody, right?
Mhm.
So who do they send the bill to? So maybe do we need to do some investigation if you're asking to send a bill?
Yeah.
That maybe, you know where I'm getting with this, Sue, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and I think everybody else can read the rest into that,
Mhm.
so.
Sue,
I've made that note, and that's a very good point. I mean, one of the other things we did talk about when we met collectively and committed to meeting again was that there has been discussion in this last year and a half that an ambulance will be reinstated in Crossfield.
Yeah.
We haven't seen one. We haven't heard anything. So I'm going to suggest to council that this may be one of those areas where you really want to get on the Minister of Health
Yeah.
with regard to doing some heavy duty lobbying with respect to getting that ambulance back in town, because that will alleviate a lot of problems as long as that ambulance isn't in Calgary transporting people around.
right.
The second part of that we talked about was also lobbying the government for more funding for level 2 facilities, because they've left municipalities one more time in the lurch,
Holding the bag.
expecting us to pick up the cost and the slack.
And that's something I agree with. And I was going to say, this council will continue and our admin will continue to lobby for those causes. For sure. I think that even as a small town, we have a little bit of power to lobby, and we'll continue to do that. We don't have a new fire chief in place yet.
Hopefully within days.
And I know I would really like the new fire chief to have a look at this
Absolutely.
before we make a decision, if
Fair
that's
enough.
okay.
Yeah.
And I just think it's only fair to the new fire chief not to make a policy days before he comes in, he or she, or whatever that looks like.
Yep.
And I would like to bring this back to another meeting so that they have time to review the policy before we vote on that. Counselor Brennan?
Right. I just had a question related to, I don't know how it got, I missed it, but levels of service on the fire department, this little chart here. What was, I don't remember the reasoning that we all ended up on technician level response for dangerous goods, including ammonia, chlorine. Like those are some pretty scary substances, and I don't believe that our fire department's equipped for technician level responses on those dangerous goods. I don't
They
remember.
aren't at the moment,
Okay.
but we do have ammonia in our plant or in our
Yeah,
arena.
In our arena.
So right now,
Yeah.
our focus for fire is containment. And then we
Okay.
call out Airdrie as a
Oh,
regional
okay.
partner.
that was my question. I was
Yeah.
like, I don't understand how we can,
Yep.
like, that's a real dangerous thing to force our volunteers into.
And I think for future
So-
too, we have to think about other things too, like there could be a train derailment.
Yeah, well-
Right in town or right next to us, the gas plant is right there.
Yeah.
There's lots of different hazards around.
Right. and I-
Crossfield that we would have to train for.
And I vaguely remember that discussion. I was just making sure that that didn't mean what I thought it was,
I see.
what I thought it meant. Like that's a pretty extensive set of training from what I understand. So,
Well, and that's the point I think that was made at the last meeting when fire services were here. We cannot forget the majority of them are volunteers. They have full-time jobs.
Yeah.
And it's called a work-life balance.
Hmm.
So they need to have family time besides just volunteer fighting fire time and a full-time job.
right. And that's what I was kind of getting at. Like if we're expecting them to show up to these calls and, it's dangerous for them. That's basically what it comes down to. That's all.
Unless they're certified, you're absolutely right.
Counselor Gustafson?
Don't take this the wrong way, but
Sure.
yeah, have work-life balance and stuff. They made the choice to become a volunteer firefighter. So they made the choice and they understood the commitment to be a firefighter.
Yeah.
Sure.
So,
Don't disagree, but I do suggest
But-
that 600 calls a year is excessive.
That's accessible.
And the, like,
Yeah.
to elaborate, like the technician level is super advanced for what I think we're capable of. Like that's
Don't disagree.
totally out of the scope of what we're capable of.
And
Or
I
like-
think that you're right for now,
Yeah,
but I
for
think
sure.
that with the review that we just did and with the training dollars that are earmarked,
Mm.
I think that could change.
Right.
Especially as we grow. All right,
Anyway.
any further questions?
Can I make a suggestion then?
Yes.
Mayor Harris, if we're going to table this, because my hope is the new fire chief will be starting mid-May.
Yeah.
Or later in May, but will definitely be at the training early May, that you postpone this until the first or second meeting in July. That gives the fire chief
Yeah.
at least a few months to settle in.
I think that would be really good. I don't think we have to make a decision on Alpha Bravo today. And that does give more breathing room for you guys to have more discussions with the lodge in the manor. That to answer those questions and figure things out. So I'd be happy with that. How about you?
I'm okay either way. I do like the idea of waiting for the new chief.
Yeah.
You're not,
Yeah.
throwing something on his plate that you're making a decision and he's not getting able to look at it. And in another breath, I don't want, the lodge to suffer as
Yeah,
well.
that's
It's one thing that's close to my heart. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty committed to them as well. And I want to make sure that they're taken care of as well. Whether it's cost, burnout, whatever it takes, that we do the right thing.
That's right.
So
Excellent. So can I get a motion then?
certainly,
Excellent.
okay. I move that we table the current recommendation to set out for the Crossfield Fire Department on its levels of service until further notice.
All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Motion carried. Thank you. Thanks, Mandy. You're off the hot seat.
Thank you. And if there's any way, just in regards to lobbying and whatnot, let us know what we can provide, right?
You
We're
bet.
happy to fight the fight with you.
I think that it should be a collective fight.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah,
So,
you bet.
you know, starting from data collection, we're being more even detailed on what we're, you know, kind of like logging so that we have more information and whatnot. But yeah, let us know what you think might be helpful, and
That's excellent. Thank
Okay,
you. Because
perfect.
I mean,
Thank
thank you.
the questions might be tough, but the lodge and the manor are part of this town,
Oh, absolutely.
and we're in this together. So
Well, we're going to
um,
call someone to help
we
us
just have
off
to
the
get
ground.
there.
So
we just
Okay.
have to get there.
thank you. Have a good night.
Item 6.2, annual budget policy. Amber.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am presenting some changes to the annual budget policy 2023-06. The annual budget policy is necessary to establish principles and guidelines for the preparation of the annual budgets and unbudgeted expenditures. It also ensures effective means to deliver services to citizens and to enforce accountability for the proper and prudent management of public funds. So as a result of the current budget and property tax mill rate setting process, there are some minor changes proposed to the existing annual budget policy. The annual budget policy was written in 2021. The primary purpose for the review is to strengthen the policy and process by which property tax revenue is levied between different property tax classes. So major changes to the policy include including a definition for market value neutrality, ensuring the municipal revenue property tax total budget will not be adjusted by market value fluctuations. Increases or decreases in assessment derived from actual increases in assessment derived from actual growth will serve to increase tax revenues. And including verbiage on a tax split. And this is the town will have different tax rates for residential and non-residential classes. Non-residential properties shall bear higher rate of taxation than residential properties. The tax split shall be taxed using a rate that is 1.4 times the single family residential rate by the year 2025. After 2025, the non-residential split property tax rate shall be the higher of 1.4 times the single family residential rate, or the average of the prior year non-residential splits of municipalities in the same or similar market. Minor changes to the policy include adding definitions of direct costs and indirect costs and fees, removing the reference to the department budget reports, updating budget timelines, aligning multi-year planning with legislated MGA requirements, a more robust definition of fines and penalties, and inclusion of offsite levies. I will note that I do expect that a reserve policy will be brought forward to council later this year, and at that time, the reserve portion of this policy may be reviewed. One thing at a time.
Yeah, that's right.
There's a lot going on.
Thanks,
So
Amber.
the policy is attached. And do you have any questions?
Okay, questions for Amber.
Through the chair,
Go ahead.
that 1.4 times for the tax split, is that pretty consistent around the other municipalities around Carstairs?
It's fairly consistent. I did an analysis of the mill rates from 2022 tax rate bylaws, and Carstairs was 1.28. It kind of fluctuates. Everyone's a little bit different, but overall, the average of the samples I took of similar sized towns was 1.43. So right around that target. The town of Crossfields, historically from 2015 to 2022, the average of those years, the split was 1.38. So we were really close.
Mm-hmm.
But just in the last couple of years, like we kind of veered away from that that typical rate split. And I think a lot of times the reason why the non-residential properties are assessed or taxed a little higher is because for them it is a tax. It's a write-off. It's an expense, a business expense, whereas residents don't have the luxury of their property taxes being offering them any kind of a tax break.
One more question, if I may. You said it veered off in the last couple of years. Would you have any idea why it veered off?
I can't explain exactly why, but all I can say is through strengthening our policies and procedures that shouldn't occur moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. And I agree with that statement 100%.
Yeah.
Through the chair.
Go ahead.
Is there maybe a possibility that we should have something in there about the vacant lot?
So there is a separate policy that speaks to vacant lots. And I'll be bringing that to the special meeting. It is on that agenda.
Okay. Are we also reviewing that one, or do we like the way that one is?
Well, I don't want to steal my thunder from next week, but I was planning on requesting to rescind that policy. As you know, I want to leave you in suspense. As to why?
All right, I'll try not to park
It
your
will be
driveway
for
with
the
the
benefit
answer.
of the community.
Yeah, but I'll to be continued.
Fair enough.
If that's okay with,
Yeah.
if that's an acceptable answer, I'll leave you in suspense.
Thank you, Amber.
With bated breath.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any further questions for Amber on the policy? Okay, can I get a motion?
Through the chair, I'll make the motion that the annual budget policy 2023-06 be accepted as presented.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Excellent. Thank you, Amber.
Thank you very much.
Looks like you're going to be up again.
Yeah.
And I think we'll have some questions for you.
That's fine. That's excellent.
Whenever
So
you're
this
ready.
is a little different. This will be my first foray into running a PowerPoint presentation while I do my verbal presentation to you guys. So I'll kind of walk through the report and then go through the presentation, not so much through the budget line by line. So that'll kind of be the backup information for the slide deck. And if you have any questions, I'll definitely be happy to answer them. All right. The Municipal Government Act states that municipalities must adopt an operating budget each year. The operating budget provides resources for the day-to-day costs of delivering municipal services to residents and businesses. Funding for the services delivered to the town of Crossfield stems from three main sources: property taxes, user fees, and grants. Costs associated with the delivery of services include salary, fuel, electricity, contracted services such as the RCMP, and legal fees. The operating budget also includes debenture payments and transfers to reserves. The 2023 operating budget includes three property tax increase options. Option 1 is a 3% increase, consistent with the provisional budget previously presented. Option 2 accounts for a 4.75% property tax revenue increase. And finally, option 3 budgets for a 6.2 property tax increase. All three options provide a balanced budget, operating budget. I should mention that the 6.2% increase is pulled directly from the annual budget policy. If you want to refer back, 8.2, actually the budget policy states that tax increases will be to a sufficient level necessary to ensure the community future sustainability. This was included in the policy previously. The town shall use the September 1st Alberta Consumer Price Index as the targeted property tax increase. So on September 1st, 2022, the CPI was 6.2%. So that's where that figure came from. Seems like it's a common theme of the night, the CPI, second time it's been brought up. Okay, council must make choices to keep the town on track in achieving the vision of a welcoming and dynamic community. Growing reserve funds will ensure that the community has funds available for future projects that preserve or enhance the quality of life for citizens. The 2023 provisional budget was brought to council on October 18th. Since that time, administration has incorporated budget adjustments based on council decisions and other factors, which are summarized below. So property tax revenue increases under option 2 of $68,120 and under option 3 of $125,402. That's over and above the provisional budget that was presented in October. Just kind of a side note, a 1% tax increase is equivalent to about $39,500. So just so you know, in your mind, you understand what 1% looks like.
But what is that? For example, what does the three different percentages
Mhm.
for a regular home in Crossfield? So what
Oh, I'm
would
gonna
be-
get there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Don't worry. It's coming. Okay, carrying on. Interest revenues increased from the provisional budget of $10,000, and I actually increased it to $100,000 based on the higher interest rates that we've been receiving in our bank accounts. So that adjustment was just catching the budget up to reality. Grant revenue has increased by $82,999, which includes the Canada Summer Jobs Grant funding and also 100% increase to the MSI operating grant. Traditionally, we received just under 38,600, and now we're receiving $77,198. So that's well appreciated extra funding.
Until it changes to LGFF.
Yes, that's just this year's carrot that we're going to enjoy.
Exactly. No carrots after this.
Yeah. User fee revenue decreased about $47,000 as the budget reflects the agreement in place to operate the transfer site, the decrease to the bulk water rate, and the loss of rental revenue for the arts and craft room.
Which was like $600.
It's
or
not
something.
significant, but you know, it's something. Also in regards to revenue, grant funding is being investigated on a continual basis, and we recently were awarded a $600 National Volunteer Week grant. So that's, you know, hard work.
That just made up for this room. That's fantastic.
Pretty much. There you go. So now we broke even. Perfect. So on the expense side, the police funding model expense increased $25,000, and that's because we received the actual bill just recently. The expected police funding model cost for 23-24 year is about $225,000.
So the what was the retro pay amount?
That is not in the budget, and I believe because our municipality doesn't have a detachment and we're under 5,000 population of 5,000 people, that we are not.
So we
a
were
part of
exempt from that.
We're exempt.
Correct. And
Okay, good.
most of the other municipalities that had to pay it were advised 2 years ago and started putting millions away.
Okay, good. That's good. That's good news.
Good news. Yeah. Salary expenses decreased under option 1 and 2 by $37,000. So some of the salary changes to salaries saw adjustments to salary and employer deduction amounts to reflect current levels. And also it removed the 3 previously requested new positions in that provisional budget. Option 3 reflects an increase to salaries as the development officer position remained in the budget. This position is identified as critical to the organization as the town continues to grow. The added position will ensure permits and growth continues to be processed efficiently. I know that the residential assessment growth was about 4.4% again this last year. So that's, I think in the last 5 years anyways, we've been averaging about 4% growth. So that's easily 20% growth in the last couple, handful of years. So
Yeah.
it's significant.
I'm just curious though, we have a statement in here for that position, but where's the position justification?
Well, that was presented in the provisional budget. I do I brought it along with me just as my kind of backup notes, but yeah, so that has been presented previously, but not included in this package.
But previously, I think that what we also asked for was, you had a justification, but where's the proof? Was there overtime, or what were those matrix or outcomes that were, can prove that aside from just the, how many development permits, what is the justification for overtime or somebody's overworked or whatever to get a position? That's, remember I asked for that the last time? I just don't think we've seen it yet.
Okay.
I don't recall, but
Yeah, well, I mean,
Okay.
we have a lot on the go. Sorry, Amber, just go ahead.
All right. All right, contracted services overall has decreased by $22,518 due to adjustments made to the operating agreement at the transfer site. Contracted services have increased in other areas for professional audit fees, legal fees for defending bylaw infractions, and for developing fire services training programs and other training requirements that identified through the fire services review. Repair and maintenance costs have increased by $7,000 overall, attributed to budget increase in fire operations and as well as parks. This increase is necessary to maintain equipment as it ages. Transfers to reserves have increased since the provisional budget. Option 1 sees an additional $143,954 transferred to reserves, while under options 2 and 3, that amount increases to $203,954. Options 1 and 2 both have provisions for establishing an operating reserve with expected contributions of around $16,000 to $24,000 respectively. All right, so aside from the transfers mentioned, oh no, I think as a part, including, sorry, this $143,000 additional transferred is the transfers to replenish the offsite levy and capital reserves that are currently slightly underfunded. So this transfer has been made possible due in part to the electrical franchise fee imposed in January of 2023. So that's what that revenue is kind of earmarked for in 2023.
Fantastic.
Right. Okay, so at this time, we're going to switch to the presentation and we'll walk through this. So I'm hoping you can see. Do you want the lights dimmed or?
Anybody want to
okay?
borrow some glasses?
All right.
And a magnifying glass?
Okay, so the revenue overview. So our municipal revenue is about $9,269,000, and it's broken up by the majority of it is 46% of that is property tax revenue. The next largest slice of the pie is operations and utilities. So that would be our utility bills. And third biggest piece would be administration. So we're looking at interest revenue, penalty revenue, and our franchise fee revenue would be all kind of lumped in there. Planning and development, a lot of that would be our offsite levies and any permitting fees. Protective services would be cost recovery for fire and fine revenue on the bylaw side. And I think to round out our pie, we have community services. So that's a lot of user fees, rentals, stuff like things like that, I would say for the most part, and some grant funding for FCSS in there. Expense overview. So the majority of our expenses are in the utilities department, and that would be mostly the purchase of water for our utility for metered water. Administration, a lot of that is salaries. Well, salaries are spread amongst all of the departments. But you kind of see how how the expenses are spread out amongst the different areas. It seems like administration, community services and operations are all fairly close in the cost to the town.
Counselor Guston has a question.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I just raised my hand. What part of the pie, where does our or what part of the pie does the reserve?
The reserves are funded kind of in all the departments. I do have a slide towards the end of the presentation that kind of breaks down the reserve transfers and which departments those funds are coming out of.
Is it in the same?
No, I have to apologize. I really whipped this presentation up quick to make the agenda, and I tried to make it a little bit better for you. Plus, I was sitting in here yesterday testing it out and realized that it was really hard to read. So I tried to make it a little bit more easy on the eyes.
Okay, so you'll answer my.
Yep.
Later on.
Yep. So this is the slide that kind of talks about that question, Mayor Harris, that you had. So the provisional budget presented in October included a 3% increase. After consideration of the inflationary pressures and to ensure community future sustainability, administration recommends a 6.2% property tax increase consistent with Alberta CPI. So the effect of on the average residential household. So this is based on an average single family dwelling in Crossfield with an assessed value of $385,000, which is the mean or the median assessment value. Last year, that number was slightly less at $336,000. So you're going to probably ask, how does a 6.2% increase equal $1.43? Well, there's a couple things that are factoring into that anomaly there, and part of it is the assessment growth. So that 4.4% residential growth that I mentioned previously, and also the other part is the writing of the non-residential rate. So by improving their piece of the pie, it in turn makes the residential piece of the pie a little bit smaller. So that 6.2% increase really is very marginal.
So
at the end of the day.
For that $349,000 house.
For a $385,000
Or
house.
85, yeah. How much in total would the increase be?
The tax increase?
Yeah.
$1.43.
That's it, just $1.43.
Yes. That 2022 number is based on average assessment using the 2022 mill rate. And the 2023 number is that average assessment for 2023.
So we're not charging them an extra $100 or $50. It's like
Okay.
less than a cup of coffee. Less than a cup of coffee.
Than like one coffee.
Right, one coffee.
But this
That's what I wanted.
But this
That's
is
what I'm clarifying.
yes. But this is for an average home whose assessment has increased and that average amount. So depending on how your assessed value increase, whether it's more or less than average, each individual property owner's change is going to be different.
That's
so
right.
that's like the really important piece of property tax puzzle, which again, when I introduce the tax rate bylaw, there'll be further discussion on that. But this is kind of a first intro of what that looks like.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure that everybody understands, like, the 6.2% may look like a huge number, but it's really not a huge number.
But we're in a great position this year because of that growth and
That's
the
right.
roughly 90 permits and new homes that were built,
That's right.
plus the $385,000 in Fortis
In
franchise
Fortis, yeah.
fees.
Yeah.
So that has really saved our bacon. I can honestly say.
Yep.
Yeah.
So other increases that we'll see are the increases to the water bill, the utility bills, and that's about a $30 increase over the course of a year. So over the 6 bills over the year. That's for the flat rate user. Anyone who consumes more water than what is included in the flat rate would be adjusted. And the franchise fees, that change year over year reflects the addition of the electrical franchise fee. So yeah, the net annual effect is about $180, which broken down into a monthly increase is about $15.05 a month. So it's,
3 Starbucks coffees.
yeah,
Or two if you get fancy ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. So that's the kind of good news story out of that. So any questions
Well, first of all, I think that great job on your presentation.
so far?
I like the visuals. I think that makes it easier not only for us, but for residents to understand. So I just want to appreciate that.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, so where do the property taxes go? We have 68% of each property tax dollar goes to municipal taxes. So that's the running the town of Crossfield. From fire, road sweeping, snow removal, utility billing, everything. 31% goes straight to the province for the education tax, and 1% goes to the Rocky View Foundation. The 2023 education tax was held at the same level as 2022. And the Rocky View Foundation, they operate the 2 lodges currently, with a 3rd one opening up this summer. And their 2023 requisition included a 5% increase over the prior year.
Can I just make a small correction to that through the chair, if I may?
Yes.
Yeah, they have the 2 lodges, one in Crossfield, one in Cochrane, but they also have the self-contained as well in Bicycle here in Canada. So yeah, just
Okay.
just a clarification that they have more than just the 2 lodges, and so.
All right. So next we'll kind of break down the town departments. So the council department, council budget deals with all costs related to town council, including per diems, fees for meetings and conferences, travel, and professional development. The members of council sit on various internal and external boards and committees and are compensated according to the council remuneration policy. So the cost of council for the 2023 final budget is just under $140,000. And the change that you notice there is primarily due to the fact that 3 members will attend convention this year rather than what was previously budgeted. The administration budget includes the CAO office, finance, taxation, reception, communication, IT, human resources, and general administrative and legislative services, along with the economic development activities. This department has a positive net cost at the end of the year of $3.472 million. And that's, of course, because the tax revenue sits in this department. So some of the reasons why the revenue is higher is due to the interest revenue that I spoke of earlier. And the expenses are higher also because of those increased transfers to replenish the offsite levies. Oops. There we go. Planning and development and subdivision services. The planning function provides development services to the municipality, including growth management, community and stakeholder consultation. So there is a net cost to the town of $133,326 for the planning department. Most of this budget is the offsite levies, the revenue, and the transfer, the expense.
If I could add something to that, you're okay with that, Amber? One of the big costs, at least in 2022 moving forward, and we're still paying a little bit in 2023, was the offsite levy bylaw. As council's aware, we haven't had an update for 12 years. So this was a very thorough one, and it did cost money.
Yeah.
Okay. Oop, we went the wrong way. Protective services consists of fire, emergency management, and municipal enforcement. Fire Services provides fire service, firefighting and first responder services to the town, residents and visitors, and to regional partners through agreements. The Community Peace Officer provides bylaw control activities and traffic enforcement. Aside from that, they also operate the Christmas hamper program and the Do Good in Your Hood positive ticketing program. It's always nice to mention those kind of positive social programs. And the net cost to the town for protective services is $465,960. And the significant changes here from the approved or the provisional budget include increased amounts for training and contracted services, a CPO summer student if the Canada Summer Grant is approved, legal fees for defending bylaw tickets, and some adjustments to payroll deductions. Some of that administrative stuff. Community services includes FCSS, community development, recreation, parks and facilities, and the town of Crossfield Cemetery. So there's a net cost to the town of $1,332,000 for this department. And some of the changes since the provisional budget include an budget of $10,000 of revenue for the sale of columbarium niches. How that previously hadn't been considered. Updated Canada Summer Grant applications and increased to transfers to reserves. The Operations Services Department is focused on public works activities such as road, sewer, and sidewalk maintenance. Maintenance activities include snow removal, sanding, street sweeping, and infrastructure maintenance. And there's a net cost to the town of $1.555 million for that department. The expenses are down because those two operator positions had been removed from the budget. And there's some increases to equipment repairs, especially some of the heavy equipment, aging heavy equipment. Utility services is comprised of water, sewer, and waste management services to the community. These are vital services with many inherent risks, and therefore the operation involves careful attention and compliance to standards. There's actually a net benefit of $178,766 in the utility department. And there's very, very minor changes over the provisional budget in this budget area.
Go ahead, Sue.
Just a comment, and I'm always flabbergasted by this, but municipalities have a tendency with regard to the net cost. And in this case, we've seen this is a revenue generating budget. It's my belief and recommendation that in the future, council should look at putting whatever excess revenue we have in this account into a specific reserve specifically for utilities and not let it just go into general operating. Because that's where our biggest expenses are down the road for replacement.
True enough. All that stuff we can't see that we depend on every morning when we wake up.
Mayor, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what you're saying is we should have a plan.
I do. Yeah.
Okay. Versus what we had in the past.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah, no plan.
No plan.
just clarifying that. I wasn't sure of what I was hearing.
Yeah.
All right. And transfers to reserve. So I highlighted here in practically invisible font, apparently. All the departments and the operating transfers to capital reserves that we have included in the budget. Do you have any particular any question in particular?
No, that's okay. I just know that you're breaking it out from the department.
That's right. And as I mentioned earlier, the plan is to bring forth a reserve policy, and then there would be a little bit more policy and whatnot on how to plan for and manage the reserves and you know, whether there's limits or, you know, some rules around this.
Yeah, so,
Aspect.
for example, if we keep putting reserves in and we go with the 6.2 percent, how much money could we have in reserves in 5 years?
I think we've targeted about 5 million, didn't we? Roughly?
Well, that's a good question. I'm sure, yeah, if we,
The caveat to that, though, is that that's if you don't spend any money out of reserve.
Right.
And we know that there are some capital things that have to be done. For example, the arena's moving forward.
That's right. We have to just be
Yeah.
careful of those capital
So that
projects,
would
and which
be-
ones we do.
That
Yeah.
would be absolutely the stellar end,
Yeah.
but it won't be that. Even if you took that in and put it at 50%,
That's right.
you'd be looking at between $2 and $2.5 million roughly.
Okay, that's still fair. Go ahead, Councillor Justin.
I can't really see it, but if maybe you can explain the method behind the, or I guess the math behind why you allocated out of which department? Because I know you're coming with a policy and saying, hey, we need to take so much out of fire, so much out of operations, so much out of this for their portion to reserves, but are you keeping separate accounts for each?
correct,
Is that,
yes.
that's correct.
Yeah.
So are you doing it on a percentage basis, based on their budgetary requirements for that year? Is that what your method? So whoever wants to answer that.
We got to remember reserves specifically are for capital, right? So when we go through this and we move
Yeah.
money into reserve, when you look at, for example, the community peace officer
Mhm.
program, that 15,000 is being put away for the fleet, for the replacement of the vehicle in, I think it's 3 years,
Yeah.
right? When you get to fire services, again, a big part of that is any upgrades that need to be done at the hall. And we're talking future now, we're not just talking 2023, as well as the fleet.
Yeah.
We know we have a pumper that's on its last legs. Operations, same thing, you'll see a huge amount there. We've got a grader that is archaic. And there was one other piece of equipment, and I'm trying to remember what it was. Do you remember, Amber? There was 2 we were having issues with.
No.
We've put a lot of money into them this year in repairs. So you're pretty much looking at the majority of the reserve costs with regard to operations, fire service
Mhm.
operations is for fleet.
Yep.
Okay, when you get to parks, it's things like facilities.
Mhm.
The arena is a good example of that. And we do have a few parks. We've got signage we've identified as a capital item.
Mhm.
Those all cost money and that's considered capital.
And that policy that you're going to bring forward is going to reflect all of that as really good guidelines for years to come and, councils to come. So.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you're doing a 5-year capital plan, you will have a 5-year summary of how you got to that point and where you're headed.
But that's also legislated now by the provincial government.
They legislate, we have to have a 5-year
That's-
plan,
Yes,
but council determines what direction and where the money's going to go.
that's right. And I think in addition to that solid plan that we're putting in place, your asset management plan that
Correct.
we implemented last year is also going to help with these pieces.
Correct.
I think this is great. I think we've come come a long way from the beginning of this. So
Mhm.
this is great to see.
Great. So overall, depending on which option, whether it's option 1, 2, or 3, the total funds transferred to either to reserves or to replenish existing reserves is $1.01 to $1.07 million in 2023. And
Can we, again, I just want to caveat this because I think it's so important. When we talk about replenishing by that 1 point so many million, 400 and something thousand of that is going to replenish the offsite levy,
Yep.
which hopefully the auditors can identify some of that for us, as well as the capital monies that were supposed to be in reserve that weren't in reserve. Okay. That won't happen after this year.
After
though.
this year, right?
Right,
And
so we'll
that's
have
good.
that
Yeah.
moving forward.
Thank you. I know that council has some questions. I think even maybe in some of the lines of your budget, if that's all right. So we'll open it up for questions.
Through the chair, I have a few.
Okay, go ahead.
Um, looking at the admin miscellaneous revenue, like 2022 actual was 12,000, 12,500. And for 2023, it's been dropped down to 1,000. Like that seems to be, is there some singular revenue that we got in 2022 that is not, that we don't think we're going to get in?
Oh,
20
yeah, that. Just dawned on me, that was the $10,000 deposit for the sale of the CIBC building, went
Oh,
to that one.
okay.
So it's a
So
one-off miscellaneous
we're
revenue.
still close. Okay. My other one was for an admin was the HR legal expenses. Like in 2022 actual, we spent 42,000 and now we're going to drop it down to 72.
I think if council recalls, 2022 was a heck of a year for HR.
Yeah.
We
Mhm.
had a lot of dealings with the CRA in terms of peer reviews, a lot of penalties. We also had to recalibrate and recalculate employee deductions across the board for everything because they weren't done properly. So that it will not be happening in the future.
Right. My biggest one was in the fire department revenue. 2022 was actually almost $300,000 and we're only expecting 140 for this year. Like, I don't see, unless it rains all summer, I don't see there being any less accidents on, and the price of that we can build transportation has gone up like by 1/3. So I think that's maybe a little low.
It's probably pretty light, but as you know, with fire services, it is such a forecasting department. It really depends on a lot of factors, weather being the biggest one and how many call outs we have. So, I mean, we could increase that without a question, but we were being very conservative, especially with that department.
That line item also stuck out to me, and aside from last year, because last year was unusual, there was several big fires, the mushroom fire, there was an industrial fire and a lot of grass fires. I don't know if they're typical. But I did an average, I think 5-year average, not including 2022, and it was about $145,000 average. So I was comfortable with the 140 being, you know, I'd rather be conservative in budgeting for revenue rather than, you know.
Then my biggest question is in arena expenses for arena salaries. I don't think we spent $13 million.
Yeah,
That
was the typo. Yeah, for sure. There's an extra one in there.
Totally blow the budget.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a good catch, Joe. For sure, that's a typo. But that doesn't really have anything to do with 2023 budget. It's just a little oopsie on the actuals, but yeah.
Yeah, basically, those were my biggest questions just on those particular line items. I'm good.
Excellent. Anyone else? Well, it's whoever wants to speak. Go ahead. Looking for my question marks here.
Okay, through the chair.
Go ahead.
Amber. Okay, so my first question was under admin expenditures. 13600 for admin CAO discretionary. Is there a way that we can make that a little bit lower, like between maybe 4,000 and 100,000 versus 7,500? It just seems a little high.
I think that the actual was 3,300 and some change
I mean, I
in
think we could,
2022.
yeah, I definitely think we could lower it. I do think it's also nice to have a little
Cushion.
kitty in the budget, just in case something pops up. It's not a lot, but I don't think it's unheard of to have some CAO discretionary funds. But you know, whatever the committee considers appropriate, we can definitely adjust.
Through the chair again, under the same category. I'm curious as to what covers for the hospitality promotions. Because we have $5,000 in there. So what is it used for? $51100.
There it is.
There it is. That's a very good question.
Yeah, it went from $153 up to 5,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the budget last in 2022 was 10. So unfortunately, the budget manager isn't here, and I might not know all what's in what was planned for in that particular line item. But I can follow up with you.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. I'm not done yet. Sorry, Justin. Okay, so this is under fire department. 58800 under training ground.
Yep.
So can I just get a little bit more of an explanation as to what training ground is? So are they planning on expanding beside the fire department or going somewhere else, or?
So it's my understanding the fire services has a training ground where they do their weekly training, set things on fire, put them out. I don't exactly know. I believe it's it hasn't been properly maintained over the years. So in the process, I know at one of the council meetings, possibly in January, it was decided that there would be some funds allocated to improving the maintenance of the training grounds.
That was in our fire review.
Correct.
Yes, that was all
Okay.
identified through that review. Yeah.
All right, okay. I was
So
just
that's a new,
questioning.
it's a
Sorry.
new budget line. Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious on that because I know if they do need more space, that the rodeo grounds has been offered to the fire department for training purposes.
Oh, okay.
And in 2019, I think was the last year.
Rodeo offered our own space for that. Thank you.
Hey, we wanted to train the juniors. The building worked great for producing fog and making them crawl around on the floor. So,
Okay.
all right, so two more, sorry. Okay, so under planning and subdivision expenditures, 11000.
Which line item with that?
2-6100-110-00.
For salaries?
Yeah, I'm just curious as to why there's two lines. You have two lines for salaries, two lines for deductions.
Right, because the second line is just highlighting that new position.
Okay. Because the line number was the same. That's what
Yep.
I was wondering.
Yep.
Okay.
It's the same, but it's the same budget line, just kind of split
just-
up to highlight that new position.
Okay, all right. And I think my last question was if you go down to 260-00 for the lead sign. So what is that budget for? I thought the signs were paid for. So is that for programming? Or what's it
That's for SIM cards or some kind of,
Programming
Okay,
okay.
Yeah.
And
and getting them both working.
It's canceled.
Apparently this year we looked into it and it was a line or something and it's been since canceled. So that budget could be removed.
Okay,
That was my last question.
excellent. Anyone else?
The chair.
Counselor Knight?
Just curious, I know we set the rate on CPI. Do we know what our regional neighbors are doing that are similar sizes? An increase?
Well, we don't set the rate on CPI. That's
No,
like,
no, I know what
oh.
we've taken it from the CPI. Sorry, I should clarify that. But do we know, kind of tough to talk to other neighborhoods or communities?
Carstairs hasn't done theirs yet.
Yeah.
And most municipalities haven't. They're in the middle of doing their audits.
Just curious.
I would say they're gonna be pretty close, though.
I know a lot of the municipalities, our neighbors have announced their budget or their tax increases, and I don't think that, they're all hovering around a 5 or, higher than what we've seen in the past. But if you think about where we've been the last couple of years, a lot of place, through COVID, there's some cuts or some forgiveness and reductions and whatnot. So there's some catching up. There's a lot of impact.
There are some municipalities that are well above ours.
7.8,
Yeah, even looking between 7% and 9%.
Cochrane being one of them.
Yep.
I'd just also like to highlight that 6% isn't really a true 6% when you factor in the growth.
Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
not a true 6.
That's true.
But this is also how we don't fall behind and we maintain
Yep.
The services that we do have.
That's right. And that's
Yeah.
included in that budget policy
That's right.
document. So
Well, and you've got a pretty ambitious strategic plan too, whether it's recreation facilities, whether it's, Range Road 12, like there's a lot of projects in there that council's been really ambitious with, and you're gonna need money to pay for it.
Well, we're gonna need money for
Yep.
a long-term solution to water treatment
Mhm.
soon. We have to start planning for that. Any other questions? I just had a couple, but I'm going to, in a broad way, say this. I think that in Councillor Fox alluded to one or two of them, but it looks like in some of the areas for 2022, we didn't really even come close to spending the amount that we budgeted for. And now we're increasing the amount on the expenditure side. I'm wondering if we can close those gaps on, there was quite a few line items throughout. If we can just have a look at those. Because if we only spent, say, 1,200 in one area, and then we have a $5,000 budget, like, are we gonna spend the 5,000 this year? Or are we gonna only spend the 1,200?
I think too, one of the things I'll suggest to council is that in 2022, there was a significant number of miscodings to various GLs. And as council recalls, we were cleaning up GLs, we were eliminating GLs, we were trying to get the GL system in place that was much more organized and reflected more of what we were spending. So some of the costs that you see in 2022 might not necessarily be accurately placed in the right GL. So
Yeah.
when we were doing the budget for 2023, when we all sat down and talked about it, we identified that that's definitely an area that all the directors and Amber will be focusing on in 2023 and beyond to make sure we're coding things correctly. So it's a true reflection of what's being spent in each department line item.
So
So we'll own that.
if you can just have a look at it though.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just make sure.
Yeah.
I don't want to like isolate money that if we don't need to.
Yeah.
Under CPO expenditures. Amber, about halfway down the page. Item 2. Well, contracted services. 221-00-230-00. We have 10,000.
that's that new budget for legal fees and defense of bylaw tickets.
Okay, that's what I was wondering because I hadn't seen it before in the budget, so
Yeah.
I was curious about that. Excellent. I'm just curious too, under the council budget, I know for training, for Alberta municipalities, we have the 3,000 or 3,500. And that's great. FCM will be in Calgary next year. And I think this is a really good lobbying opportunity for council. If we could send a couple of council members to that.
So will that be in the 2024 budget then?
I think 2024.
Yeah.
Yeah, so. It's just that I don't think we'd fly to Toronto and lobby and go do that. And I don't think that would be good, but
Might be
because
ideal.
it's so close, it'd be good.
I was gonna say we're not.
No. You're not true.
Sorry.
That's funny. Okay, and then I think, if you guys have a look at that, that kind of covers my questions. I'm just curious and I want to open up for discussion. I'm not sure that, without knowing what we have and seeing the audit, if this is the cart before the horse.
Well, we have seen the preliminary, we've gotten copies of the preliminary audit. We just got them. No, you won't get them yet.
But we have it.
No, I know. We got them and there's still quite a bit of it missing, but we are meeting virtually with the auditors tomorrow because they typically will meet with the management group first. And then the audit will be presented to council next Tuesday night.
Yeah, next Tuesday.
Yeah. It doesn't preclude you from not voting on the operational budget till after the audit next week.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm suggesting. I think I'd rather see the audit first and see where we're at before voting on the budget. Although I think you did a really good job in presenting the budget. It doesn't have anything to do with that. I think it's just knowing where we are, where we are now to get to where we need to be in. I think that's information that council may need to have first.
I think that's fine. I know it does push us into some tight deadlines as far as getting the mill rate passed and in time to produce tax notices and have them mailed by the legislated dates.
Yeah.
So you'd be looking at potentially 3 readings of the tax bylaw on the May 2nd meeting, just because there will be time otherwise, unless another special meeting is called to read that. I think that's the only consequence, but that's still doable.
Any other discussion? Okay. Motion?
Okay, if everyone's in agreement, I would like to make a motion that we table the 2023 operating budget until after our meeting with the auditor next Tuesday on April 25th.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Are you voting? No. Let's do this again. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Against?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you, Amber. Really good information.
I do like this much better than what we had before.
Okay, item 7.2, reminder of the special meeting on Tuesday, April 25th.
7 o'clock here. Just want to remind council that it is a public meeting. But there will be no questions entertained from the gallery in terms of your procedural bylaw.
Thank you, Sue. Okay, Mayor and Council business, item 8. We're currently interviewing CAOs. We'll be doing that for the next couple of weeks. And I attended the spring market. Deputy Mayor Fox.
The only thing I have is also for interviewing for the new CAO.
Counselor Brennan,
Nothing further to report.
Counselor Gustafson,
Well, multiple meetings with the Rocky Foundation, as I am the chairman for the new Big Hill Lodge project. So we're tomorrow will be got many presentations for the architect. Every tomorrow meeting 6 or 7 hours worth of well, and as well, I attended the supported the event.
Counselor Knight,
Nothing to but thank Councillor Guston for
Oh.
the water commission.
Sorry,
That's good socket guy.
Counselor Lambert,
Nothing further to report.
Counselor Vang,
Just that I attended the spring market on the weekend as well, and
great. And can I get a motion?
Sure, through the chair. I move that the mayor and council updates be accepted as presented.
All in favor?
I
Motion carried. Okay, 9.1 administrative update.
Nothing to report.
Nothing, you haven't done anything?
Nope,
You haven't done anything, what's going on?
nothing, no how, no when.
Hey, can I get a motion?
I'll move that the CAO's verbal update be accepted for them.
All right. And that's a wrap. Other than, hang up.
Oh, Sly.
We can reach you now.
Yeah. Upcoming events, FCSS events, parent and tot playgroup will run every Tuesday from 10:30 to 11:45 at the Crossfield Library. Last playgroup on April 4th. Adulting 101 workshops in partnership with Community Links will run from 5:30 to 7 at the library on the following days. April 25th, May 9th, and May 30th. Special council meeting on Tuesday, April 25th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Now, we will move to adjournment.
The council adjourns the meeting at 8:55 p.m.
Excellent, thank you.
Very good, nice birthday present on Tuesday, by the way. Maybe do it. Maybe on my birthday.
It's gotta be done. It's gotta be done.